Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and this is Pro Cycling Manager 2019. It's a tutorial on training from fitness to fatigue, and then into fitness peaks, tied around your objectives, and then we'll throw in a little bit about race day condition as well. Now, in this tutorial, we'll be talking mostly through career mode, but this will also translate very closely with Pro Cyclist mode. So both of these are very relevant to these specific topics as they function the same within both game modes. We're going to open up, though, with pretty much the worst team you could possibly pick, just to show that even with a bad team, you can get the most out of any team, regardless of their stature. So we're going to take Lotto Kernhouse here, half-star Continental team, and we'll set things up with them, and I'll show you how to get the initial setup in the first couple days and how to get your team prepared for the season going ahead. And then the rules will apply throughout the year and as you hit objectives. So it's January 1st as we enter the game mode. And the preseason is the first thing. We're going to go straight into that. If you want other on how to set up your career mode as a whole, I do have a tutorial on that as well. So be sure to check that one out. I'm going to skip by a lot of stuff, but we're going to go straight into the preseason. Now, I need to select what I'm going to do for preseason before we hit accept. That would be very bad. And here's what we're going to do. Regardless, every time, unless you want total realism, and the realism isn't that real, if you want to get the most out of your riders, regardless of what their first objective is, and that's actually really important, by the way, but we'll come back to that, set them all to very high. This is going to put their fitness level between 90 and 95 to start the season. Anything less, you're wasting your time. The way this game is set up, it is entirely possible and practical to maintain a high level of fitness, 90 and above, the entire season, and without growing fatigue over the course of the season. Good or bad, you can get the most out of your riders by setting them all to very high from the very beginning. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. And then we're going to move into how to make the most out of that. We're going to have to move forward a day for that to happen. So let's go ahead and move forward one day. And then we'll check it out. Now, from here, preseason, that's all set. Everybody's got their objectives. The objectives are a little bit tricky. We're going to come back to them because, for one thing, rider by rider, you can only choose your top riders, and then their other riders. Okay, there's their selection. So you can actually set your objectives rider by rider, and that's actually pretty important, and it could be a very time-consuming thing because you'll see as we go through this, that objective is going to play a major role. But before we get too far into that, we need to understand how maintaining our fitness is going to be important and how it's done. This is the fatigue, and that's what we've got to avoid. Now, this is how they're naturally set. You can see that there's rises and falls in that. By starting at 90 plus, you see most of them can maintain that for a long time going into that first one, but then they're going to hit the fatigue by the time they hit that first objective by starting so high. We're going to fix that. First thing is the planner. Now, whatever your schedule is, you can adjust that through the calendar. You could try to add races. You might get into some, you might not get into others. Here's the thing. The later you wait to change your schedule, and if you're a Continental Pro team trying to get into World Tour races, this gets complicated because you have to wait for answers from the organizers, and it takes months to get some of those answers back. That part's tricky, and it really complicates this process, and you have to do a lot more micromanaging throughout the season to keep up with that. But if you're a Continental team or a World Tour team, and that stuff is a given, Continental, you're not going to be at the World Tour races. If you're a World Tour team, you're already going to be in those World Tour races. It's those Continental Pro teams that have the possible invites that get a little bit tricky. So that's a little more advanced, and that just requires micromanaging, but it ultimately works the same. That's why I took a Continental team here to make things a little bit easier. No World Tour races eligible. If you're going to change the schedule, change it January 2nd. Go through, figure out what races you want to be a part of, and that's a tutorial for another topic on choosing those races. But get that schedule finalized right away before you get into what we're getting into now, meaning do all this on January 2nd, get your answers from the race organizers on the 3rd, and then proceed with this step. I'm not changing the schedule. Therefore, I move on. The next part, use the planner to pick the races for your riders. Now, here's that tricky part. I micromanage this over time. Why? Because if I plan out more than 1, 2, or 3 months ahead of time, which I'll go up to about 3 months occasionally, if you plan beyond that point, and then somebody gets hurt or super sick, where they have to sit out for a while, it changes the schedule. And the moment you start changing the riders' schedules, you get into a world of hurt. Now, I'm not going to look through these riders. I don't care what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. You should care what your riders' strengths and weaknesses are. Take the wrong riders into a race and you're screwed. But that's a different tutorial. That's not what we're here for. Tour of Antalya, I'm not worried about the profile. Again, same thing. You need to worry about that. That's a different tutorial. So I'm just going to randomly put some guys into races so they have a schedule. And actually, let's not even worry about filling it out. I'm going to use Joshua Huppert's here. So I'm going to give Huppert's some races to give him a calendar. Okay? Again, this is something you need to take your time with. You need to figure this out. Do not do what I'm doing. This is just for example's sake. All right, we gave him a schedule through. You're not going to Italia. We're not getting an invite to that. Okay, through the end of June. That's a good time. Now, the reason why you have to have this schedule built out as far as you're going to go is that the race calendar affects everything greatly. It affects the fatigue, it affects the fitness level, and it's going to affect the fitness peak. That's why you need to have it. All right, now we have a schedule. Difficulty of program, percentage in the week, all of that. That's how hard they're working. It's based off of a combination of how hard they train. Break is a 0. Light training is a plus. Hard training is a double plus. Medium training is a double plus. Hard training is a triple plus. It's a combination of how hard they train versus how much racing they're doing. So, for example, this is a light training week, but it's still 71%. Why? Because he's got a 3-day race. So he's light training for 4 days and racing for 3 days. This is the double plus, so it's pretty hard training, 75% effort, but no races this week. So these are almost the same. Hard training and racing essentially come out to be the same thing. It's 100% effort. Hard training is like having a race day. Now, to build your fitness profile for the season, you've got to have that scheduled out because it's going to affect your training. But to simplify, and this actually makes things really nice, to simplify and get good fitness and have 90 plus throughout the season, it is as simple as train hard or rest or race. And that's your only 3 options. Light training and medium training are useless. Get rid of them. Don't use them. So everything. Make it triple plus, and then you're going to build your schedule from there. And then once you have triple plus everything, it's all down to the red bar, your fatigue. Now, it doesn't pick up until it becomes noticeable. Once it gets above 50%, it has a negative effect. Below 50%, no effect. So all you have to do is keep this bar from being visible. It breaks this graph at 50. So you don't have to actually check week by week how many points of tiredness you have. You just need to keep it below 50 all season long. To do that, you've got to throw in a week of break. Now, on average, if you did no racing at all, 4 weeks hard training, 1 week break, 4 weeks hard training, 1 week break, we'll keep a high level of fitness all season long. But we need to race. That's the whole point of the game, isn't it? You got to race occasionally. So, anytime fitness kicks in, you need to turn it into a break. Now, this worked, but I can't wait 5 weeks till I do it again. And this is why we needed our calendar set. He's racing in the Tour of Antalya. So even though he got a little bit of a break, like 43% worth, he's still racing for, 4 days? So 2 weeks later, even though he got a little bit of a break, he's right back to having fatigue. So there's more than one way to do this. You can just wait until you hit that point and there's fatigue. There's fatigue. And do it that way. But you can see my fitness levels, well, it's not that high. Why? Because, actually, that is pretty good. That's 100 right there. You could do it that way. That is certainly one way to do it. Anytime you get to red, take a break. But look, here, it finally catches up to us as, oops, our fitness level is going to drop considerably. Why? Because every time I've taken a break, it happened to be on a week that we were still racing anyway, so we're not getting much of a break. So sometimes you're going to need to micromanage this and go back and try to replan in a smarter way. Actually give yourself a break. So if we do this here, it lowers my fitness a little bit, right? We're only at 98%. But look how big of a jump that just made. There's no fatigue until we get all the way here to Alente. Take a break here, again. So I had, 3-4 weeks worth of break and still had fatigue issues at the end of this window. 2 weeks of actual breaks where there's no racing going on, and suddenly we have high fitness levels consistently after it builds up through the first few weeks. And no fatigue anywhere in sight. Go through your calendar, continue that trend. You can see we reach that point again here a little bit later, where we hit that. But if I go here, take it on a week where we have off, I'm maintaining a very high level of fitness throughout and not getting fatigued. Manage your calendar. But if you don't have those races put in, as soon as you start adding races to the calendar and putting a rider into races that he was not scheduled for before, it's going to completely alter this arc, and it will get you fatigued. But that is the way to manage your fitness. Have hard training anywhere and everywhere you can, and just mix in breaks on, off. You could take a break on a week that you're racing, but it's way easier and far more effective if it is like this week. This week we have a single day. Paris-Roubaix is the only race that week. If we took that week off instead of other weeks, that's still going to be effective because it's a lot lighter schedule. See, 14%. 2 weeks in a row of break, though, not good, and that's why the fitness level plummets. All your riders in career mode, use this pull down bar to do it. In pro cyclist mode, you have an actual tab in your manager, in your information about your riders. You have an actual training page where you do this exact same thing. But it functions exactly the same for Pro Cyclist mode. You're just worrying about only your fitness level. So with that, you should, once you get above 95%, just about be able to keep a 95% or above fitness level all season long. You can keep 97, 98, 99 most every day, depending on your race schedule. And you can keep yourself in a position where you'll not suffer from fatigue as long as you keep it below that 50 points the entirety of the season, unless you literally try to do every single race on the calendar. That could get a little tricky. I've never tried that, so I don't know if that would actually work. If you could manage that with breaks here and there and basically not train hardly at all, maybe you could get it done. But do that for your entire team with career mode, just pulling it down one by one, going through it. Meaning you're going to have a lot of work to do in the first 2-3 days on the calendar. If you want to do what I do, push it out a couple months. Get through the end of March starting, or get through the end of April starting out. See how things go. See if you have anybody injured. Tweak things as you go along. See how your season's going. You have 2 sprinters. It turns out one's doing a lot better job than the other, so you want to get that one into certain key races like objectives. That way you micromanage later. And you're splitting up the workload. You're not doing it all at once. It's up to you how you want to do that. But at least keep it out ahead of time, at least a couple weeks before you get there. Because once you get to a point, that training schedule locks in for a week. Can't change it. You can end up with that fatigue because you didn't plan out far enough. Or you get to a race and nobody is scheduled for that race, and all of a sudden it shows up and it pops in random people, and maybe you end up going into that race with the completely wrong team. But at the same time, that schedule is all messed up for you. And it could mess up down the road what you're trying to do. And especially if it ends up with an objective, you can completely screw yourself over by taking the wrong team in. Okay, now, the next really, really big piece here that we're going to talk about is your fitness peak. Every rider, 3 times a season, is going to get a boost to their race day attributes. Each rider is their own unique entity with their attributes. Ruch here is an average 62. He has no areas of strength, but looking at his profile, he's a little bit better on the flat than anywhere else. He's a little bit better as Baradur. Downhill, hills, meaning this guy, well, you can see from his profile, he's 20 years old and a Baradur. Baradur meaning he's a fighter, meaning he wants to get in the breakaway and try to win from the break. Now, as weak as he is, his chances of winning are like 0. But, as the game says, but at least he'll be on TV. Regardless of profile, those are his attributes that he enters the day with. Based on his race day condition, we'll talk about that one at the end of the tutorial. Based on his race day condition, he's going to get a boost, no change at all, or he's going to lose some of those points. The biggest thing affecting your race day condition, we're going to talk about the others later, but the biggest thing affecting it is the fitness peak. In the past, 2018 and prior, that fitness peak, it hits as soon as the bar fills. Fill the bar, get the fitness peak. Fill the bar, get the fitness peak. This is where the fitness peak shows up. Right now, well, these guys aren't eligible. Let's see here if it is. Right now, we are more than 8 weeks away from any rider's chance at a fitness peak. If it's more than 8 weeks, this bar is gray. Let's go back. I'm going to choose one of the other tutorial series that I used. There we go. All right. Here we have a yellow bar. Now this becomes really important because if we hover over info here for Madsen, his fitness peak gauge is triggered 8 weeks before the next objective for him, Tour de Romandie. Nicolaisen, well, we see there are things that affect his improvement of this. Okay, there are training camps that can train you up quicker. I have not tested that value. I do not use the training camps in this game. They're very buggy. They're very faulty. They're a waste of money. Unless maybe you're going to recon stages for the Tour de France and try to get some sort of bonus that way. And I still haven't seen how that one quite plays out. Not a fan of the training camp system on here. That's a topic for another day. But the races and the training will focus on those primarily. Because if you're a continental team especially and you're on a small budget, you can see our team budget here is $83,000. Money's not going to go very far, especially for a training camp. If we go and spend $15,000, $20,000 on a training camp, that's a quarter of our budget gone in a hurry. This one plays out, and it's different. It is different per rider. I just discovered this. Okay, each rider's a little bit different on how their training works. Pro cyclist mode, you gain 2.25 points per day. So this all comes down to measuring the worth. You're going to have to hover over this info bar to get a feel for your team. And let me see if there's anyone different here. There's only a few guys. 1.2. He's a 1.2. They are all a 1.2. I would imagine if we had... Like, Madsen could be different. I mean, he's a 73 overall. Martin Madsen's a known name, but no objective yet. Let me see if... Yeah, let's try this. Let's go back and load my main playthrough. There we go. Everybody's approaching an objective, and they are different. So this is based more on potential, I think, than anything else. I don't think it's necessarily current ability. I think it's based on potential. So each rider's a little bit different on how this builds. So this could take some careful planning to get right. Okay, but here's the simple math behind this. The fitness peak takes 100 points to activate. It unlocks 8 weeks, which is 56 days, before an objective comes up. Depending on their quality level, they have a different amount of training points that they're going to acquire every day. You can see that Sepkus 1.5, Narvaez 1.2, Iking 1.5. And you can see that it bounces back and forth between those. Now, the highest I've seen is a pro cyclist rider with world-class potential at 2.25. The lowest appears to be 1.2. Maybe it goes down as low as 1. The better the quality of the rider, the better the training quality is going to end up being. So it all changes how that system works. So you have to monitor this closely. But here's the simple way on how this works. So training, okay, that's training points per day. Whether you are on light, medium, hard, or taking a break, it does not take any of that into account. Each rider has a set amount. So training or not, any day that they do not race, they're going to collect the number of points that it says hovering over this. Cassart, 1.2. If you have your fitness set right, there's not going to be any penalties for tiredness, meaning that's not going to be a factor. You don't have to worry about it. Then the only other one, outside of those training camps, if you get involved in that, then play around with it and figure it out, because I'm not going to comment on training camps any further than I already have. I'm not an expert on training camps. But races give you 3 points per day. So every day that you race, you're going to get 3 points. That is instead of your training total. Meaning you're going to build up fitness faster when you are racing than when you are training. If, like my pro cyclist one that has a 2.25 total, if you were all the way at that 2.25, you have that grand champion potential. At 2.25, it's going to take 45 days. Excuse me. It's going to take 45 days to hit a fitness peak. 8 weeks is 56. So you're going to hit that 11 days early, even if you don't race once during that time frame. And that's why it becomes really important to know this. You're going to hit it 11 days early. Now, without any modifiers, a fitness peak lasts between 12 and 18 days. So in career mode, or starting out in pro cyclist mode, a fitness peak lasts between 12 and 18 days. So if you hit it 11 days early without even being involved in a single race leading up to your objective that you set, you're going to be 11 of your possible 12 to 18 days into that fitness peak before reaching the start date of your objective. So it's going to last between 1 and 8 days. Now in pro cyclist mode, you get modifiers. Skill tree, that's for another tutorial, but skill tree pushes it level 1 to 18 to 22 days, level 2, 22 to 26, level 3, 28 days exactly. And you can trigger it on your own before it reaches that 100%, as long as you've gotten at least 90% of the way there. But once it hits 100%, it's going to trigger anyway. Now, 28 days is nice, and 11 days early, that's not a big deal. That's 17 days still of a fitness peak. So if you're trying to do Tour de France and you don't race at all, wait, are you going to not race at all for 56 days, for 8 weeks, for 2 whole months? Unless you're injured, that's not happening. So here's how it works if you race. 2.25 for that grand champion, 3.0 for that race. You're over earning by 0.75 per day. The comparison is that 2.25 is your baseline. That's the 45 days. So every third day, 0.75, 0.75, 0.75, add that together, 2.25. 3 days covers 1 day of training, meaning it's shortening. So if you race 3 days during that 2 weeks, instead of 45 days, it's going to take 44 days. Now you're 12 days early. So based off of the 2.25 model, which you can see here in career mode, it can be all over the place. Pro cyclist mode, a little more straightforward on that part. But going off of those numbers, 2.25, right? 9 days of racing during that 2-month stretch pushes it to a full 2 weeks early of your objective. 20 days is 2.5 weeks. That's of racing. 30 days of racing in an 8-week period. That's a lot of racing. That's racing every other day. That's like being involved in a grand tour and still having 9 other days of racing. That pushes it out to 3 weeks early. So you got to pay attention to how many days you're going to race to figure out where your objective is. Now, here's the trick. And I have not tried it yet, but I'm going to try it now that I've got this figured out. At least in pro cyclist mode, where this is a real problem. what you need to do, more likely than not, is you need to change the objective. Figure out what your real objective is, what you want to have your fitness peak for, what period of time. Whether it's you want to be fully fit for Paris-Roubaix, or the Tour de France, or the Vuelta. Pick your objective, know its start date. Know when you want that fitness peak to hit. And if you are in this situation where you're going to hit it 2 weeks early, let's use that nice round number, 2 weeks. Okay, exactly 2 weeks. Start date, let's say July 1st is the start date. Change the objective. Don't make it the event that's on July 1st. Make it an event that starts like July 12th or 13th or 14th. See where I'm going with this? It only takes you 6 weeks to build to that fitness peak instead of 8. Then push your objective back 2 weeks. Even though that objective doesn't mean a thing, you're going to hit the objective when you want it. And then the real race that you're involved in, the one that you wanted it for, you're going to begin that fitness peak then. Requires careful planning. Requires you to do a little math, but it's really easy. Training camps, it's gonna mess with things a little bit. It's not necessarily a good thing. Now, let's go with somebody who has a 1.5 here for a second, and let me see if I can quick math in my head a little bit. So 1.5 points per day. Racing is 3. It's double. It's going to shorten it by a day right off the bat. Now, 10 days is going to be 15. So 20 is 30. So 60 is going to get you to 90. And you're going to need, 7 more will push you over, right? So you need 67 days, okay, with a 1.5. 67 days, if I did my math correctly there. That's 11 days late. But simple math on this one. Races give you 3 points. Training gives you 1.5. You're doubling. You're literally taking 1 day off every day you race. That's easy math. I like this 1.5. That's clean. Every day you race shortens it. So if you're going to hit it 11 days late with a 1.5, 11 days of racing will get you right on target. Keep it down to about 2 weeks worth of racing, and you're only a few days early, and you'll be well within your window. The guys that are the 1.2, I'm not going to do the hard math on that one. You can do it yourself. But the guys that are the 1.2, be careful, because the 2.3 is actually 2.25. So we don't know that the 1.2 is actually a 1.2. I don't know that the 1.5 is actually a 1.5. You have to test it. Move forward 1 day. I can't move forward 1 day on here right now because I have a race scheduled and going on. But I am sitting on 16.4, which means it was previously 15.2, which means previously it would have been 14. So theoretically, this one sticks to a flat and even 1.2. If it was 1.25 and they had just rounded up, we'd already be at 16.5. If they had rounded down. If it was 1.15 and they rounded up, it could be, but that's a long-term thing that you would have to see. Count back, you could figure out whether 16.4 divides into that evenly or not, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to take the time for that. Theoretically, 1.2 is 1.2. That one means the races are going to have an even bigger effect, but it also means that at 1.2 instead of 1.5, it's going to take a lot longer than 67 days. I mean, we're losing 0.3 every day worth of training, which means we're going to be a lot further off. And for these guys to get anywhere near that 8-week mark, they're actually going to have to race a lot to get there. It's not going to take just 11 days to reach it or 14 to be happy. they're going to have something closer to 15 to 20 days of racing. You could do your own math on that one, but you're going to get the idea of what it takes to hit the fitness peak. But the real trick here, know your calendar, know how much you're going to be racing, know how much they have to do, and tweak the objective or the training. If you can't get them enough racing days to get there, and you need to then bump up the objective. If you have too many racing days and you don't want to take those racing days away, push back the objective. It's that simple. It's not that simple though. But I think you get how it works. At Fitness Peak, you only get it 3 times a year, and it is largely valuable. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to look, there's that Fitness Peak piece, but we're going to look at race day condition. You can see that there's a lot that affects the race day condition. Some of it is completely out of your control. There's a random element to race day condition. It has a +5, -5 range every day. So at maximum is a +5. At minimum, you have a -5. And the random part of that works on a bell curve, meaning 0 in the center of that +5, -5 is the height of that bell curve. And the +5s and the -5s, they are the minimal part of that bell curve. You are very likely to get a -1, a 0, or a +1 modifier each and every day that you race. That part is totally random and you cannot control it. However, you can control a lot of other elements, your own modifiers to that 0 base set, which is your natural rider. If you add a +2, it's going to improve their attributes on the day. If you have a -2, you're going to have a bad day. Or you're going to struggle to not get dropped. So, what you can take into your own control are these things. There's weather. There's your recovery attribute. Let's glance at that one real quick. So here for Brian, the last one, bottom right there, REC. That is recovery. He is a 66. The higher the rating, the better you're going to do when you have stage after stage. Meaning, day by day, the deeper you get into a long race, the more tired a rider is going to get. If they have really high recovery, they're not going to see that fatigue. They're not going to see that change to their race day condition. But you can see here, Brian, it's only stage 2, but he's got a minus because his recovery rating is really low. Tiredness, that's another factor. What did I say about managing the fitness level? I didn't figure that out initially when I started this playthrough. I've just now got it right, where all my riders are now going to start pushing into those 90s, and the tiredness is going to go away fully. Took a while to figure that out. That's why I'm here to help you with that. Illness, can't control that one, other than leaving the riders at home. Injury, same thing, can't control that. But again, you can see that those are negatives. If you have a guy that's sick, if you have a guy that's hurt, if you have a guy that's tired, if you take them to a race, you're just going to make it worse. And chances are they will end up with a negative race day condition, meaning even though they're there, they're going to struggle. So sometimes it's better to send them home. Here's things that you can actually do something about. For those 3 parts, tiredness, illness, injury, it's just a matter of leaving them home. And take away that negative component to your team. But here's things you can watch out for and get positives. A favorite race. Riders have favorite races. We all have favorites of something. They're human. Even if it's computer AI. They have favorite races. If you take them to their favorite race, they're going to get a boost to their form, boost to their race day condition. Outstanding performance in the general classification. This is a big one. You lead the race. You're wearing the yellow jersey. You, like Julian Alaphilippe in real life at the Tour de France right now, get so fired up by the fact that you have the yellow jersey on, that you're French and that all the French community are on the sides of the roads just cheering the crap out of you. And you don't feel it like pressure. You feel it like a constant pat on the back. And you ride better. Outstanding performance in the general classification can see a real boost to your race day condition and make you ride better than you are, like Julian Alaphilippe, who's an outstanding punchy climber. But he's never been known as a mountains guy. But he has worked his butt off and staying in there, and a lot of that is that type of factor. Reconnoitering training camp. That's the one I was talking about. Training camps, but a Tour de France reconnoitering, as in like doing recon on stages of the Tour de France. Hello, bonus. You've seen it before you know it, therefore you're better prepared for it. You're getting a bonus on that day. There's something that training camps are useful for. I wouldn't do that for Continental. I wouldn't spend money on that. And you can't recon smaller races anyway. But those Grand Tours for those World Tour teams, if you have money to spend, if you're Ineos, if you're Deceuninck Quickstep, Sunweb, you have a bigger budget, yeah, take those bonuses. Get them. And then preparation. That's the fitness peak. That one has the biggest impact. It's massive. That's why that fitness peak is really important. That's why we talked about it for so long. But here's a couple things, besides getting that fitness peak right, besides having a high overall standing, besides staying at home when you're sick or injured. Pay attention to the weather and favorite races. And here's where that's going to play a factor. Let's go ahead and open our profile of Miguel Bryan. They have preferences. Here's his favorite races: Tour de France, Torino, Adriatico, and Milano, San Remo. I don't know any of his favored weather or disliked weather at this point, but over time, they have favored weather, they have disliked weather, they have favored temperature, they have disliked temperature. Now, cold is cold, but some riders, they're not going to be as bothered by it. Hot is hot. Some riders aren't going to be as bothered by it. Some people love the rain. I live in the northwest of the United States. It rains plenty here. And love it or hate it, this place is beautiful because of it. I'm okay with the rain most of the time. Cold rains, though? No thanks. This is more advanced stuff. But if you pay attention to your rider's preferences, it will help you control race day conditions. If you're looking for support riders, domestiques, or a lead-out man in a sprint, or somebody to protect another rider through a handful of climbs, if my sprinter is Max Canter and Miguel Bryan, my lead-out guy, let's say Gino Mater, maybe that extra man, the who I bring into that race, maybe I look into that when I'm doing my planning. If you really want to get into the deep stuff, if you're really struggling and you need every little bit you can muster, every little boost you can get, find somebody who favors the race. Find somebody who has the right preferences for weather. And then that requires you a little bit to know, well, where are you racing? Grand Prix of Sochi? maybe you don't know Sochi. Maybe you didn't watch the Olympics. Maybe you don't watch Formula One. But you know Russia. What's Russia known for? That's right, it's far in the north. It's cold. Look at all these -1s. Why? Because it's 4 degrees and cloudy. And everybody's got low recovery except Evenepoel, except Sepp Kuss. They're going to offset. So, race day condition, you can do something about it. Excuse me. Nail down those fitness peaks. If you really want to get nitpicky, get down to the weather in the favored races. And take care of that fitness level. That's the big one. Preparation. If you do that fitness level right, you're going to get all your riders in pretty good shape most of the time, and you're not going to see, if you stay away from fatigue and have a high fitness level, you're not going to see -3, 4, 5. You might see some -2s occasionally, you might see some -1s, but you're going to see a lot of zeros and positives. And that could make the difference again and again and again and again. And when it comes to that training, when it comes to that fitness peak, know your riders. Maybe keep a chart. See who's at the 1.2, see who's on the 1.5, see who's on something else up to a 2.25. Figure out where they're at. Pro cyclist, it's a little bit easier because you're only worried about one rider. Tweak the objective if you need to try to get them where you need them, when you need them. Because there's nothing worse than launching a fitness peak, racing for one day on the wrong terrain that's not your strong suit, and then 2 weeks later, your next race is coming up and your fitness peak expires before you even get to that next race. Nothing worse than that. But hey, that's an introduction to your training, your fitness, your objectives, the fitness peaks, and a little bit about race day conditions. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Be sure to check out my other tutorials. I have ones on rider attributes. I have one on career mode basics, race basics. This one, I've got another one on advanced later season career mode stuff, contract kind of stuff. And then we're going to be doing a pro cyclist one in the near future as well. I'll be trying to roll out about one per week, so those last two should be coming out. One next week, one the week after. And we might be done with this series on that, but in the meantime, I have a career mode series for 2019. I have the old Pro Cycling Manager 2018 career mode series still going once a week. I have 2 Pro Cyclist series, one with the Stage Racer specialty and one with a Classics Rider specialty. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to check out those other series and the channel. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Bye for now.